Hi, I'm Margy Schaller, host of the Sober Life Rocks podcast, and I want to welcome you. Now, today I want to talk about kind of a newish term in the sober world, and that is gray area drinking. The term gray area drinking, it was first coined by Jolene Park, a functional nutritionist and health coach during a TED Talk after she stopped drinking in 2014. Jolene defined gray area drinking as a space between the occasional social drinker and severe alcohol dependency, where individuals may not display the hallmarks of addiction, but they still experience alcohol's negative impacts on their lives. Now, the problem is that gray area drinkers don't often identify as having a problem with alcohol in the traditional sense, but they might just drink regularly to relax or cope with stress or feel socially at ease. This pattern can slowly impact mental health, physical well-being, and productivity, even if the person still appears fully functional in their daily lives. Now, for many, myself included back in the day, gray area drinking is challenging because it doesn't fit neatly into a black and white category. People might not experience the visible consequences often associated with alcoholism or alcohol dependence, which can make it easy to overlook how drinking affects their lives. Recognizing gray area drinking is often the first step towards reassessing habits, exploring new coping mechanisms, and considering whether a sober lifestyle might offer greater clarity, energy, and fulfillment.
Welcome to the Sober Life Rocks podcast. You may have made the decision not to drink alcohol, or at the very least, not at work-related events. Whether you've never been a drinker, are in recovery, or made a health-related decision, we see you, and you are not alone. In today's world, networking, socializing, and celebrations often happen over drinks, and the struggle can be real. Through this podcast, we're changing that narrative. We're here to create a community where individuals like you, who choose not to drink or drink less, can find camaraderie, support, and practical advice.
So I brought on a special guest today to talk about this. Jenn Kautsch is the founder and creator of the Sober Sis community and leader in the Sober Curious movement. Jenn's passion and life's calling is to create a space where women can renegotiate their relationship with alcohol without labels, judgment, or shame. She coaches women who feel stuck in that gray area on the drinking spectrum and helps women get off of autopilot, mindlessly sipping through the habit of wine o'clock. Man, I wish I had known you back then. Jenn is all about holistic health and promotes freedom from the detox to retox cycle, sharing through her personal faith, understanding of science, and the ability to facilitate connection. Lives are being changed. Every day, women are becoming more fully alive through sober-minded living and more present in their own amazing lives. So, Jenn, I would love to get to know you. I would love to get to know your story. Just tell me, how did you come into this Sober Sis world, and who are you?
Yeah, well, first off, thank you for having me. I'm so excited about our conversation today because I think your podcast is awesome. I think it rocks, and it is going to reach a whole different group of people, especially with your audience being more in the professional world. And I love that. So thank you for the opportunity to be here. And yeah, the Sober Sis world is one I created because it's one I wished I could have found. But just to backtrack and tell you a little bit about me, like you said, my name is Jenn. I am 53. I live in Fort Worth with my husband of almost 30 years. We'll be
Wow.
married 30 years this May. We have two adult kids who have just grown and flown, and now I have a puppy named Ollie.
Nice.
And I love what I get to do, which is work with women from all over the world to help them now drink less or not at all. But my story, just to backtrack, comes from an unlikely place. I didn't really drink at all until my young 30s. I didn't drink in high school, college, or my 20s. I mean, I had a few drinks here and there. They were one off. I didn't really care for it. It wasn't my thing. And so I showed up in my young 30s, already a married mom, when the social aspect of drinking caught me in a different way. Because when I was younger, it was a little bit taboo where I grew up. A lot of my friends didn't drink, so I found it easy to not drink because the peer pressure didn't seem as strong because they were like different groups of people, and you had people who drank, people who didn't, and that was cool. You do you. And then I got married and started having my kiddos in my 20s. So if I hadn't been drinking by then, it wasn't really time to start.
Right,
So I
right.
kind of missed the 20s because I was building a family, building businesses with my husband. And so it wasn't until my young 30s, I was at a networking happy hour for a work at home business that I had become a part of. So I was at home during the day and at these networking business events in the evening. And there I was, 32 or so. I had at that point, maybe a 4 and 5 year old. And my kids were, kind of out of the toddler phase, about to be school aged. But life was getting hot. It was the heat of life was starting to turn up. We'd been married 7, 8 years. We had, like I said, started different businesses, and we're just, really starting to deal with more of the adult issues of life big time by then. And there I was at a networking happy hour with my business. And a good friend of mine said, "Hey, Jenn," so innocently, "Hey, Jenn, why don't you have a glass of wine with us?" I was always kind of the Dr. Pepper girl. I'm from Texas, so, everything down here is a Dr. Pepper. We're in Dr. Pepper country. So I would usually just get a Dr. Pepper or, a sweet tea, and it just wasn't on my radar. It's so wild to me now looking back because the culture was also, I mean, this is, 20 years-ish ago, and the culture around drinking was just starting to really shift into being socially acceptable to drink pretty much anywhere, anytime, like all the time, like even in a grocery
Hmm.
store.
Hmm.
All the mommy wine juice culture was starting to erupt. There I was poised as a young new mom in the business world. So it was like a double whammy. And I just told my friend Courtney, well, sure, I probably should. I mean, I'm a grown up. This is what adults do when they're networking or to transition from day
Yep.
to evening. I don't even know really what to order. Like, get me started. She's like, no problem, girl. I got you. Let's get you white Zinfandel. And I'm like, whoa, okay, what's that?
That's a
And
great gateway wine.
it was a gateway, and I didn't even know. And so, anyway, she's a dear friend of mine, and we laugh about it now. But I just don't even think I fully realized what I was walking into because I did not grow up with a cautionary tale around drinking. Both of my parents didn't drink either. And so, again, it wasn't so purely for all these rules and reasons. I think they had had a cautionary tale with
Mm.
their parents. So I was the benefactor of parents who decided intentionally that's not really what we want for our family. So I was the kid that grew up with parents who really didn't talk that much about alcohol, didn't drink it. It wasn't a big part of that part of my family. So, and then when I got to college, it was just the crazy party scene, which didn't really appeal to me. So I
Hmm.
went from not seeing it to seeing it really used crazy and abused to now I am an adult, I am working. This is glamorous, kind of the, bring home the bacon fried up in the pan. I can kind of, hang with the guys and the networking. And that sent me on a trajectory really in my 30s of, quite honestly, I laugh now, it's not funny, learning how to drink, learning how to navigate the waters of social drinking turned into a little bit of a habitual drinking when it's just kind of like, well, now it's 5 o'clock and I'm not at a happy hour, but I am in my kitchen and I'm seeing it on TV where they open a bottle of wine while they're cooking. That seems like a good idea. And then there's book club, and then there's date night, and then there's a girls' night out, and then there's just a storm rolling in. And before I know it, I'm on this detox retox loop where I'm working out, doing all these healthy, mindful things by day. And oftentimes, just built into my lifestyle, there was an opportunity to drink. And I didn't drink every evening or every time, but when I wasn't, I kind of wanted to. I was
Hmm.
always really balancing in that, I guess you could say, gray area zone where I could take it or leave it. I would tend to take it more than I left it, but I could leave it, and I could leave it for long amounts of time, or not have any real negative consequences if I just, skipped a drink or a weekend. But I always felt like I was kind of missing out, because now that I had put it in my life, it had created quite a spot. And
Isn't
so,
it so interesting how I talk about that alcohol is the currency of connection, and
yes,
everything you just talked about was tied to, the networking events or the book club or the, mommy wine dates. Like it's how we connect as adults
right.
and feel part of.
So, so true. And boy, did I just, when I was younger, it seemed a little bit immature, out of control. When I was older, it felt very mature and very
Mhm.
glamorous, and almost like a rite of passage, and something that I needed to get better at through practice. So I had a few epic fails that were pretty embarrassing, as a 35-year-old married mom to, throw up in a parking lot, just to be honest with you. I was like, oh my gosh, what's happening? And it was just because my body had zero tolerance. And in zero tolerance, I was working up more dependency as my tolerance was building, because that one glass of white Zinfandel that very first time that really, quote, did the trick, where I felt like my shoulders go down, and all that instant like relief didn't bring me any rest. It brought me quick relief. Um, Over time, by the time I was in my young 40s, that's when I really realized my daughter had just turned 13 the same year I turned 40. And let me tell you what, those teenage years and just that stage of life, really 40 to 45 for me, were really some of the most difficult years of my life, because I was trying to navigate a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, some loneliness, even some boredom, transitioning from the kids need me all the time to they don't really need me as much anymore. And Margie, I started playing really small in my own life. I've always been an entrepreneur. I've always run and started businesses or worked with others that are team building. And so I just didn't know what God had for me once my daughter graduated high school, but that was a turning point for me. When she turned 18 and was in her freshman year of college, is when I was in my mid 40s. I was almost 46. And I thought, you know what? It's kind of cool. Like, she gets to reinvent herself. She gets to graduate high school and go to another town and show up kind of new. I can do that too. In fact, I want to show up at 50 differently than I did 40. And I was just looking at 46 around the corner, and I thought, well, this is going to be more than a juice cleanse. This is going to be more than, just taking a weekend off. I've got to do some digging on who I am as a person so that I can show up differently. And I know for me, the lead domino was this pesky habit. And I call it a habit because I was doing it on autopilot. I was doing it mindlessly, almost like just without even thinking. It was 5 o'clock. I'd reach for the glass. It was part of my routine. And so to disrupt that, I thought, well, if I can start by changing my relationship with alcohol, who knows what will open up for me? Because I know that's the lead domino that's holding me back, holding me down. And that's when I began my journey, my
Hmm.
sober, curious journey.
I love so much about that story, but one of the things I really relate to is this notion of like, it's a, you call it the lead domino, but it's just problematic.
Totally.
And when I first got confronted about the amount that I was drinking by friends and family, I was very defensive. Like I was a single mom, I was working, I never missed work, I never missed any of the kids' stuff. I mean, I was involved in so much of their lives, the PTA mom and the soccer mom and all the things.
Yeah.
Didn't they know that wine was the thing that allowed me to do all of
Right,
that?
right, right.
Right. So that's why I kind of wanted to lead with this conversation about gray area drinking. So when did you first hear that term, and how did that help or not help with your reassessing your relationship with alcohol?
Yeah, well, I'm so glad you mentioned Jolene, because she's a friend of mine, and definitely a mentor in this space, because I did hear that TED Talk in 2017. And I'd also read Ruby Warrington's book that I think came out in maybe 2012, called Sober Curious. And
Mm,
so I had never heard of that either. And then I started hearing podcasts where women were talking about creating a life that you love, that you don't want to numb out from, using words like alcohol-free lifestyle. And I thought, oh, okay, I like that. It feels like, because for me, I kept thinking, I know this is something that needs to change in my life, but I don't really know that a rock bottom resonates with me. That was kind of the only way I knew at the time to look
right.
at drinking, was black or white, all or nothing. You either have a huge problem or you have no problem. You're either like, you know, uh, alcoholic, or you're not.
You're
And
not.
it was so relieving to me to start to begin to understand the full drinking spectrum. I'd never heard that before. And so this whole AUD, alcohol use disorder, and realizing that I was definitely on the spectrum of having a very unhealthy relationship with drinking, but that maybe if I was looking for a label, that was actually keeping me stuck, because it put me in the comparison trap. Because every
Right.
time I compared myself to somebody else, I was like, well, I'm drinking like all my friends, and I'm not like so and so, which is such a trap, because it's really not about anybody else. It's really about where we are
Yeah.
individually in our relationship with drinking. Is it working? Is it serving us? And it absolutely was not working or serving me at all. But this notion of gray area drinking allowed more curiosity for me to step into understanding more about the science behind alcohol. There were just so many influences during that year, that first year. And then it wasn't that long after that I did start Sober Sis, because I'd learned
Mhm.
so much and began to be so influenced by all the people I was hearing and watching, but I was still looking for a community that had some elements to it that I had not yet found. Um, and so, yeah, so that's a little bit about my journey. But yeah, hearing the notion of gray area drinking, and that there is a spectrum, and that really you can stop at any time and for any reason. And I thought only people that stopped had to for one reason, versus you can stop at any reason, at any time for any reason. And I think that I just, got a fairly early exit off the drinking highway, because all in, I really didn't have that long of a drinking career relative to many of the women I get to work with who have been drinking for decades.
So when you started Sober Sis, like, tell me about what led you to recognize the need for this community-centered approach in your work.
Yeah. Well, first off, I was looking for a group that was women only. So Sober Sis, I'm working with the sisters out there. I was looking for a women only group, and I was also really wanting to create a space where we could take it from a holistic point of view, mind, body, and spirit. And I really felt like this was kind of a God calling on my life, to take my mess, take the mess, and make a message out of it, but not in a religious or church kind of way, I guess you could say, because I feel like there's already groups out there that do a great job at that. There's Celebrate Recovery, there's Bible studies out there, even AA, talks about a higher power. So I was looking to bring in something a little bit different. And it may be hard to describe, but I'm a Christ follower, I'm a Christian. So I come from a biblical point of view, but not a religious point of view. I'm coming more from a relationship than I am religion. And so that really opens the door for a lot more discussion, versus you have to believe what I believe to come in our community. We're a very, very diverse community. And I think because I promote authenticity more than you need to be like me, that has opened the door for a lot of women who are sober curious as well as spiritually curious. And
Mhm.
so it's kind of blended the two together.
And so tell me the impact that you feel like community has had on the work that you're doing.
Oh, it's everything. I'm going to bust out and say, in Sober Sis, community is our secret sauce. It's like if you're looking for the recipe that makes Sober Sis different, like what's that magic ingredient? It is the women, and it is the ways that we communicate and support each other. We are a sisterhood like no other. I mean, there's so much acceptance and like-mindedness, in the sense that everyone, we've got a private network, so it's kind of off the beaten trail of all the scrolling and Facebook groups and whatnot. And so it's more of a destination location to come into our group. And it's just a very, very safe place. And having other women who are like-minded, who are in the gray area, and again, kind of the full spectrum of the gray area. I mean, you might have someone who's definitely drinking more or less than somebody else, but everyone has in mind they want to be more sober-minded. I would say we're less of a sobriety group and more of a sober-minded sisterhood, where my desire, my goal, and a lot of the language we use is around presence. Is this keeping you awake, alert, alive, and present in your own life? So we've kind of taken it we really start with the drinking, the drinking thing, the aspect of drinking. But the more women work with me and stay in the Sober Sis community and kind of stay on the Sober Sis highway, if you will, with all that's been created, we actually talk less and less about alcohol as we go, and more about the pillars of creating an alcohol-free lifestyle. And so with those connections, it's all about personal growth and really cheering each other on to become the best version of ourselves. And at that point, we realize alcohol definitely doesn't help us do that.
That's so interesting. That's exactly what we try to do with Sober Life Rocks, is that Sober Life Rocks is not here to help people get sober. So they're like there's Sober Sis, there's so many other areas that can really help with that. Our goal is to create that sense of togetherness and walking a journey of celebration and of becoming the best version of ourselves in a world where we may feel as though we're a little bit on the fringes.
Yeah.
Especially in the sober thing, especially in the professional world. But pivoting to that, I would love to know from you, back to the gray area drinking, for professionals, since you can relate to these networking meetings, who may not identify as having a drinking problem, but maybe they're just looking at it as, I wonder if this is a good thing or not good thing. Like, how would you suggest that they start exploring their relationship with alcohol?
Oh, I love that. I love that question, because you don't have to have a problem with drinking for drinking to be problematic to your goals. And so I think if people are walking in these networking happy hours, again, I'm very familiar where, you get the 2 tickets so you can get your 2 drinks. What do you do with the tickets? All that good stuff. I think it's first off going into that situation going, okay, what are my goals in being here? Is it for connection? Is it for building business? Is probably all of the above. But I don't know about you, but I can guess that being of sober mind is actually an edge for you in these situations. I always used to drink in those situations to take the edge off. And that's exactly what it did. It took the edge off, the edge that I had of being sober-minded. So I kind of look at it now when I walk in to these business environments, which I'm in often. And I was going to tell you a funny story about that. I walk in thinking my sober mind is my superpower. I'm going to guard and protect it, but I don't want to come across in any way judgmental, superior, or like, I'm not drinking. Look at y'all. Because you're there to mix and mingle. You're there to network. So you want to be approachable and easy to be around. But I think the first key is pre-deciding. Pre-deciding before you get in there. What do you want? Do you want to drink tonight? Especially if you're in the gray area, are you going to drink one? Or are you going to drink none? I personally find it easier to drink none than one. I think we can all agree. That's just, alcohol creates a thirst for itself. So one just doesn't do the trick. But none, I can maintain my sober mind. So I walk in definitely pre-deciding. But it's really funny for me, and it may be funny for you too, even doing this podcast, because I walk into these happy hours. And by the way, I do have a spouse that drinks. My husband still drinks, 3 or 4 nights a week. But, a happy hour here, a dinner there, just kind of like I used to. So that's been a real thing for me to navigate when we're walking in together. He's going to the bar to get his drink. He can get my drink too. It's just not going to have alcohol in it, but it never fails. I'm standing there. People have just been delivered their cocktail or they're holding a glass of wine in their hand. I'm holding whatever, my sparkling water with cranberry juice and lime. And people ask me without fail, so what do you do? And I'm like, well, I am a wellness coach. I'm a mindset coach. Actually, I have a virtual community where I help women all over the world drink less or not at all. How's that for an elevator pitch at a networking happy hour? So people don't always know what to do with that. But I think going into these situations pre-decided and pre-planning on what you are going to say. But again, I think for someone who's curious, who may want to drink less or not, you've got to have some strategies and you've got to have a wingman or wingwoman who knows what you're doing.
That is a phrase that we actually have termed or coined, because for us, there are many people who don't have any reason to not drink in their own lives, but they're so in support of this movement. And so we have members who are sober wingmen who just want to be part of the change in our world. But you started to tell a story about, being at the bar or having people come and bring you a drink, or many people that we know have talked about oh, come on, just have one.
Right.
Or, oh my God, this is the best fill in the blank ever. You should try some.
Right.
Like, how do you
You're at a
recommend
wine
people deal with?
tasting or
Yes.
that, where it's like full blown, this is what we're doing here. Join in. Why aren't you? Why won't you? Especially if you
Yes.
can, why wouldn't you? Right?
Yes. So how do you recommend
Them
people
recognizing the
navigate
joy.
that moment?
Well, absolutely. And I think, when you're first on this journey, it's okay. I think it's okay to kind of fake it till you make it a little bit, in the sense that you may need to project a little bit more confidence than maybe you feel, until you get more practice feeling confident, so that confidence is coming from the inside out. But I think as long as you are, again, I really recommend people get something in your hand. I mean, ASAP. Get something in your hand, walk in with a can of sparkling water, to mitigate that initial awkward moment where adults, even at any age, get together and there's that kind of energy exchange of like, who are you? Who am I? What's going on here? I think that is a normal part of society, that most adults have lost the skill to get through that kind of awkward moment where you walk in a room and you're like, where do I go? Where do I stand? Oh my gosh, small talk. Who do I go up to? And a lot of people just shoot for that bar and get that drink in their hand because it just quells that immediate anxiety. And we both know it works in the short term. So that's tricky because, our brains are wired for reward, and the reward is instantly there. But what happens is we lose some of our presence when we do that. We're not 100% as all there as we were. And so I think, being very confident and saying yes. I'm a yes person, not a no person. When someone is trying to be the hostess with the mostest at a party or a happy hour, or they're coming around with the tray, can I get you something? Yes, I would like, and then fill in the blank. Yes, I would like, what do you have? Yes, I'm not drinking tonight. I'd love to know your options. I just say yes and then tell them what it is I'm saying yes to. Yes.
That
And now
is
what do I want?
magic.
What do I want? Instead of no, and I don't know what I want, I say yes and then tell them what I want. And then it's a win-win, because the server, the waitress, the hostess, they just want to get you what you want. They just want to get you a drink in your hand. They're there ultimately to serve you. Now, if it's a friend that's like, oh, come on, Margy, you can have just one. I think that's where it just, you got to kind of know the other person. Are they an acquaintance? Did you just meet them? Are they a good friend that knew you when you were a drinker? I think some of that nuance depends on what you say. I teach women who take my 21-day reset challenge just to say, you know what? I'm taking a break right now. You don't even have to go into why or how long. You have to make stuff up. Really don't have to justify it at all. But
Yeah.
I do find that people are like, or just, I've got a big day tomorrow, I'm taking a break, or I don't drink.
Yeah.
I don't
One of
drink.
my favorite things, now that I am no longer secretly sober and really becoming more adept at all of this, is
Yeah.
I love to be if if I'm in a dinner gathering or something, I love to be the first one to order. And I'll
Yes.
say in a loud voice, what do you have that doesn't have alcohol in it?
Oh, there
And
you
what
go.
I'm
Just set the tone.
finding is that it's other people then hear the answer to that and are ordering maybe a mocktail that they wouldn't have ordinarily
Oh, that's
had.
awesome.
It's being so fun to play with that.
I love
Yeah,
that. Be the change you want to see in the world, and lead the way. And I
absolutely.
think that's definitely true. I can think when I was drinking, there were so many times I was out with girlfriends or even my husband that if I would have been around someone who was choosing to not drink, either for a lifestyle or just that night, it would have influenced my decision. And I'm
Yeah,
not blaming anyone for my drinking or my choices, but it would have influenced me in a positive way if I would have seen a beautiful, mineral water like Topo Chico brought in a beautiful glass with lots of lime and tahini on the outside. I would just say, I'll just have that.
exactly.
But I didn't see that. I didn't see any of that modeled. Once I got
Yeah,
into the drinking world, it seemed like I was just surrounded by drinkers everywhere all the time.
absolutely. Birds of a feather flock together.
Totally.
So one last question I have for you is that I've talked to a number of people who are saying to me, "Well, I don't have a problem with drinking. Why should I join Sober Life Rocks or why should I join Sober Sis?" They don't drink, but they don't have a problem with drinking. Is there a place for people like that in our communities?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have women all the time who are just dissatisfied with their relationship with alcohol and it's sporadic and they're just drinking one here and there. And then I also have many women join who are already alcohol free and are just looking for that community. They want to
Mhm.
be around like minded women. And, I say in my book back there, Look Alive, Sis, I really didn't have a drinking problem as much as I had a thinking problem.
Yeah.
I really did. I had a thinking problem. I definitely had an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, but literally when I started changing my thinking, I was able to pretty easily, I mean, bumps in the road for sure, put down the alcohol itself because I started working so much on my thinking. And for the longest time, I'd been asking myself the wrong question. Is it bad enough? Is it bad enough? Is it bad enough, Jen? And when I started asking myself, is it good enough? That opened the door. And I think that opens the door for other women to join our community because their drinking may not be bad enough. It may not even be the issue. They just may want to navigate the world with a more sober mind and be among women who are like-minded and pursuing this mindful, grounded aspect to their presence. I just think so many people in general, and women and moms and CEOs and business owners, we minimize our presence in the world. We think, oh, nobody will really care. Nobody really notice. My opinion, I don't know if I'm going to put it out there. And I say, rise up, step in to your voice. And we can't do that when we're drowning it or dumbing it down.
Yeah. And actually, that's a lot of what we're trying to do is that we want to build an army
Mm.
because we feel like that's part of the advocacy, that there's both safety in numbers and power in numbers.
Yes,
And if we can go to the greater meeting planners and say, look, there's this army of people who choose not to drink at these professional events, you need to do better.
that's right. That's right. We want
Um,
options. I mean, when I go to the bar with my 2 tickets, I would love to see, yeah, more elevated options.
we call them adult beverages without alcohol in them.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love
Yeah. And the other thing too, I think, is that there's safety in numbers. And so for those people who have chosen not to drink for health reasons or like you grew up not drinking or whatever, it's not because you need to join a community. It's because you want to be there for others and you
that's right.
want to create that safe space where others who didn't have the same road as you did will feel supported by others who have successfully navigated this. And I
Yeah,
think community is everything. So,
everything.
yeah.
Find your people out there. Find people. Yeah, there's so many of us now. I know you've been on this sober-minded journey for quite some time, almost double what I have. I'm coming up upon, when we're recording this, I'm coming up upon 8 years alcohol-free in April.
Oh,
So,
congratulations.
and it's just so nice to see the tide is changing. The
Yeah.
conversation out there is literally changing. And as I scour, all the menus that I can out there and promote restaurants that have great options on my Instagram and really want to be a part of the change going in that way and just empowering people to ask for what they want. Tell the restaurant manager, like you said, there is power in numbers, and I do see those numbers rising, and we are
Yeah,
definitely stronger together than we are apart.
absolutely. So that kind of leads me to the last question I wanted to ask you, Jenn. Like, thank you so much for sharing some of your personal journey and what motivated you. Looking to the future, what sort of legacy do you want to leave?
Ooh, that is a good question. As now, yeah, the kids are grown and flown. I started this when they were just finishing high school, and now I'm like, well, now what? I really love what I get to do because it has grown and grown and grown slowly and steadily over the years. I mean, I think I want my legacy to really be that there's something that will go on way beyond me because it's not about me. Sober Sis, I'm AKA the Sober Sis and Sober Sis, but not really. Sober Sis is really about our collective. It wouldn't work if women weren't sharing the way they are and giving of themselves to each other in our network. Just the pay it forward mentality is just so beautiful. So I would love that legacy to be, I wrote at the little intro of my book, when you kind of write acknowledgments, I said, I believe three things in life will last forever. I believe that's God, His Word, and the hearts of people. And so I think when we're investing in those three things, for me in my life, that's where I want my legacy to be. That she invested in people, she invested in the hearts of people, and that it's not I always joke and say it's not the Jenn Kautsch show. It is a sober-minded sisterhood of real support. And so, yeah, just creating more space for women to support women and empower each
That's
other.
beautiful. That's beautiful. I love that so much. So for those of you who are listening, we will put all of the contact information to Jenn's Sober Sis and all of her social media in the show notes. I also want to invite you all to join us on LinkedIn. We have a LinkedIn group for Sober Life Rocks, and that is where we are having these conversations with each other, and we would love for you to be part of it. Thank you, Jenn, for being with us.
Thank you. It was
And
great.
thank you all for listening, and we will carry on the conversation next time.